The Tories took a battering on this week's Question Time. Take a look.
I'm staggered, to be honest, at the gap between the audience and the panel, and the notion that you think that you're succeeding on green energy, or that people support human beings washing up on our shores or being deported to Rwanda. I'm absolutely staggered. The way that we talk about serious youth violence is not to talk about crime, it's to talk about the trauma that they've actually experienced in the last 2 years. You have cut funding, you've cut budgets in school. We can't recruit teachers. We can't recruit teaching assistants. You've cut social workers. You have cut local services to the bone. And then you're worried about antisocial behaviour. There are no youth services. There are no youth services. And absolutely, there is so clearly a gap. There is such a massive gap between what you're saying and people's experience. Why can't people buy a house? Look at their wages. They're a teacher, they have been through university, paid over 30 grand, if not more, to go to university. This ideological, want to control rent, use rent control, want to have houses, build more houses, because you can find the money to build HS2 and drill through forests. This is what we're talking about. These are ideological choices. You've done nothing for green energy in 13 years. Nothing.
Okay.
Absolutely nothing. So I think when we're talking about young people and supporting them, what has been put in place for young people? A tutoring programme.
Okay, let's put on these points to the Minister.
It's woeful. It is woeful.
You heard the lady.
The original question was about knife crime.
Well, and that is substance abuse, but you've heard two people here and from the audience also talking about,
in the time you give me, Fiona,
in terms of what action will you take, and they're suggesting not cutting services might be part of the action you could take.
Okay, in terms of knife crime and antisocial behaviour, because they're part of the same spectrum, it's all crime, but serious crime has come down quite a lot. 50% since 2010, except for fraud. And the gentleman is absolutely right.
Why would you leave out fraud? I don't understand that.
Because what
if you put fraud in, it's crime.
What happens is the criminals have become invisible.
Very strange. What's happened is the criminals have become invisible. So if crime is done by invisible people, we don't record it. I mean, in a way, I don't think it is as ridiculous as it initially sounds to sort of potentially separate crimes involving sort of online fraud, because the experience of being defrauded online is very different to the experience of being subject to physical crime, right? In part because your credit card company will probably repay you for it anyway. So I can see why they have taken that out of the crime statistics. And also, as we talked about on a previous show, like, crime is falling. The question then is, what reported crime to the police is up, but sort of crime, according to the surveys from the Office for National Statistics, is down. The question then becomes, why are the Tories running a campaign fear-mongering about crime if it's down? Because crime is down, but actually the police are also performing worse when it comes to solving them. I suppose the Tory on the panel didn't want to mention that. Great intervention from that lady, though, although I disagree with her on HS2, but I mean, very, very impassioned. Let's go to one more clip, because it wasn't an easy ride for the Tory on the panel.
Conservatives have been in power now for nearly 13 years, and they still haven't got anything. They're not building suitable places for the immigrants that come over that want to stay here, while everything's being processed, and putting them up in barracks, was it?
Yes,
I think that's ridiculous. We need investment, and I don't understand why it's taken Conservatives so long, and their ridiculous idea of flying everybody to Rwanda, I think that's stupid. They need something that's more humanitarian. They need something that's more thought out. Because there's a lot of people, a lot of potential that's coming over that can help England and the United Kingdom. And at the moment, we're wasting it because we're not letting them work. We're putting them up in hotels. We should have things that's better. And we got a housing crisis as well. Conservatives should be on this. They shouldn't be 13 years in and still scratching their heads.
That was the People's Republic of Bristol, Aaron. It's a sort of a swing city between Labour and the Greens. So you can see why the audience might have been a little bit more progressive than your average episode of Question Time. Do you think the Tories feel under pressure when they're hearing sort of interventions like that? Or do they just think these are people who'd never vote for us anyway? This is just liberal lefties, screw them, essentially?
What do you mean by pressure, Michael? Because, I mean, opinion polls put them up between 20 and 25%. So I imagine under a great deal of pressure. I mean, I don't think they think they're going to be taking seats in Bristol anytime soon. But I think they would probably say, well, actually, that's not entirely typical of the country more broadly. So what do you mean by pressure?
I mean, do they care? I mean, because I watched that and I think you should do it anyway. I'm not saying, there's no point in having a go at Tories on Question Time because they're not going to care. I think it's really important to get the message out there. I think it's really important for, actually sort of the well-being of everyone watching that. I think lots of people feel like real relief when they see someone speaking truth to power like that. I suppose I'm just, putting myself in the shoes of the Tory who's being attacked there. Is he thinking like, control yourself? Our media guys told us, do not respond to this kind of stuff. We're appealing to people who don't like migrants. We're appealing to people who already own homes. So if you get attacked on rent, if you get attacked on migration, just ignore it. Deflect. Don't let it get you down.
I think that's right. And I think that's entirely right. You look at, for instance, some of the policies they've announced with regards to Rwanda was a less popular policy. And I think even the people that support it don't think it'll ever happen. So I think that's a separate one. And I think they probably think it's partly about creating a media spectacle. But the Tories talk about boats, small boats. They talk about undocumented migration, partly because it's one of the very few things they still can capture at least a plurality of the public on, if not a majority. That's not to say that the public overwhelmingly agrees with everything they're saying on the matter, but it's perceived as quote unquote a crisis that they have a surer footing on than the Labour Party. So that's the reason why they talk about it. And look, we were in a situation in this country for many years where immigration was the first or the second leading issue in terms of political saliency for the electorate more broadly. So they talk about it for a reason. If somebody pushes back against immigration politics or policy coming from the Tory party in Bristol, I think, yes, of course they will ignore it. The renting one is a bit different because, of course, the renting situation is very, very bad in this country, but it primarily affects people under, let's say, 45. I think now, if you're in your late 30s to early 40s, you're 3 times more likely to rent now than you were about 20 years ago. Really astonishing statistic. And so that question of home ownership, a little bit different, because if there is a problem in terms of reproducing home ownership in this country, I think home ownership peaks in the early 2000s at around 71%. Today it's around 63, 64%. Clearly, if that trend continues, if it continues to go down, which will be hard, but it's plausible, then I think the Conservatives have a real problem in terms of guaranteeing their political base in the coming decades. Even if that figure stands still, I think they have major problems. Important to say, when they did win in 2015, it came off the back of Help to Buy. 1 or 2 years of Help to Buy actually managed to just push home ownership up a little bit. Very stupid policy for a number of reasons. We don't have the time to go into that. But I would say home ownership's somewhat different because they can't just ignore that forever. The reproduction of homeowners in this country is the reproduction of the Tory votes to a significant extent. In the 1920s, you have this important article written by Noel Skelton about Britain being or conservative Britain being a property-owning democracy. Well, I don't think we were ever particularly democratic because of an elected head of state, an elected second chamber, and a few other things too. But increasingly, we're certainly not property owning, particularly for people under 45. So I think that's somewhat different. They can't avoid that forever. And hey, who knows? Even maybe by 2024, I think this crisis around renting and people failing to get on the property ladder, that will start to present real problems to them. And it's a great question, I think. There's strategists, people like, Isaac Levido, Linton Crosby, the infamous Lizard of Oz. Are they going to have to talk about housing politics? I think they will. On immigration, I think it's somewhat different.